In this presentation, you will learn about Verrier Elwin. Verrier Elwin was an anthropologist and was often called J.G. Fraser of Indian anthropology. The difference between Verrier Elwin and Fraser is that Elwin was not trained in anthropology, but Fraser was a scholar from university and was often termed as the armchair of anthropology. Elwin was born in 1902. He was the son of an Anglican bishop of Sierra Leone and the chaplain general of the British force. He belonged to a religious family, therefore he got educated in theology and was supposed to take on his family lineage in terms of continuing with religious work. He attained a distinguished academic record and in 1926 became the vice president of Wycliffe Hall, Oxford, and soon thereafter chaplain of Merton College. Since he had the responsibility of taking forward the task of becoming a priest, he pursued his research and study in theology. As a student of Christian Movement meeting Elwin had attended at Stanwick, he met J.C. Winslow, who had come back from India to recruit young men for his Christian mission. Elwin was already interested in coming to India and was easily convinced into joining Winslow's Krista Seva Sangh, which worked at Sabarmati. So he abandoned a prospective academic career in England in favor of religious searching and came to India in 1927 as a missionary in Pune in Maharashtra. However, later he gave up his commitment to proselytize and dedicated his life to research and to help preserve tribal life and culture. In India, he was inspired by the ideals of Mahatma Gandhi and began participating in the independence movement. Because he openly expressed support to the Indian nationalist cause, he was taken to task by the British government when he was on a short visit to England. He later withdrew from practical politics and directed his humanitarian zeal towards independent social work in India. During a stay in Pune 1928 to 1931, Elwin was involved in national movement, so at this period in his initial days he had no idea working for the tribes. He was just interested in being part of the national struggle as he was influenced by Gandhi. He was very close to Gandhi and he worked with Gandhi. In return, Gandhi called Elwin his son. There was a very close bonding between Gandhi and Elwin and they continued for a few years to work for nationalist struggle. On the advice of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Verrier Elwin dedicated his entire life to work among the tribal people. This proved to be a turning point in his career. A combination of scholarship, religiosity, humanitarianism, and practicality all combined to make Elwin a humanitarian anthropologist. He was depressed by the attitude of the common man towards the tribal population. He also challenged the idea that tribals were uncivilized and he started to work for tribals. Contribution to tribal development. In his writings, Elwin took care to stress that he was not against assimilating tribals into the mainstream. He only wanted such assimilation to occur at a pace and on terms that suited the tribals. His contribution to tribal development is very wide and he has written 26 anthropological works on tribals. Of these, 14 are monographs, 2 are novels, 2 are anthropological studies written in collaboration with his old friend Shamrao Hivale and his autobiography. His work is appreciated because he was not trained to do ethnography or not trained in anthropology or to write a monograph, while he lived with tribes and wrote detailed monographs. Besides this, he has published a number of articles. He was a man continuously working on tribals, and today these monographs and writings are a part of all syllabus and courses on tribal development or tribal policies. Many valuable contributions were made through Man in India, a journal which published articles related to anthropological work. These writings include monographs on individual tribes, studies of Indian folklore, documentation of folk art, statement of tribal policy, etc. In addition, Elwin published many articles. Among the well-known writings of Elwin are Leaves from the Jungle, Fulmut of the Hills, A Cloud That's Dragonish, The Baiga, Loss of Nerve, Maria, Murder and Suicide, Folk Tales of Mahakoshal, Folk Songs of Maekal Hills, Folk Songs of Chhattisgarh, Bondo Highlanders, Myths of the Northeast Frontier of India, A Philosophy of NEFA, The Tribal World of Verrier Elwin, and Autobiography. Elwin was undoubtedly one of the most prolific writers in contemporary anthropology. It has been observed that he produced the largest corpus of data on Indian ethnography which came from a single person. Elwin was a self-taught anthropologist. He did not mold his writings as per the training of any professional anthropologist. He mastered the methodological and theoretical questions open to anthropology, but made use of them only if he wanted meaning in the context of the subjects he was studying. Elwin himself admits that he came to anthropology through poetry, which allowed him to view anthropology from an integral and humanitarian perspective. In his words, the essence and art of anthropology is love. Without it, nothing is fertile, nothing is true. Elwin held a number of important official positions such as anthropologist to the government of Orissa in 1944, Deputy Director of the Department of Anthropology of the Government of India from 1946 to 1949, and Advisor for Tribal Affairs to the Northeast Frontier Agency from 1954. He received a number of honors and academic awards: Wellcome Medal 1943, Rivers Memorial Medal 1948, Campbell Medal 1960, Dadabhai Nauroji Prize 1961, Padma Bhushan in 1961. Because of his in-depth knowledge on tribal affairs, he was held in high esteem and confidence by government personalities, including Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and many with whom he worked. Elwin was considered as one of the greatest romantics of anthropology and the most inspired chronicler of India's tribal people. 5 Principles of Tribal Policy. Elwin influenced Nehru's policies for Indian tribes. Nehru introduced the 5 principles for the policy related to the tribals. Nehru appreciated the spontaneity of tribal life amidst abject poverty and destitution. He believed that the tribals should not be thrown into the process of modernization, but should be allowed to participate in it as a natural evolutionary process. Following are the 5 principles formulated relating to the tribals. Tribal people should be developed as per their tradition and along their lines of their genius rather than imposing alien values upon them. Tribal rights in the forest as well as land should be respected. Teams of tribals should be trained in the task of administration and development. Tribal areas should not be over-administered with too many schemes. Results should not be judged in a quantitative way or the amount of money spent, but by the impact made on human life. In the obituary dedicated to Elwin, David Mandelbaum wrote that he had made an important contribution to India, which is a bit difficult to measure, but may be more important than the impact that he made regarding tribal policy. He changed the view that Indians have of themselves and of their society. He defended the tribal people and often clashed with Hindu Puritans who tried to reform tribal society in their ascetic mode. He rigorously denied that this brand of Puritanism was the true spirit of India. Certain aspects of his life resonated with the honored religious tradition of India. He believed in abstinence from material possessions, poverty, and self-denial for a higher cause. Elwin's critics say he was an anti-modern romantic whose influence on tribal policy further marginalized the tribals. His theory of keeping the tribals isolated left them unprepared for all external influences, and this has had a detrimental effect on the economy, social structure, and behavioral patterns of tribals, especially in the Northeast. On the other hand, Elwin's admirers argue that without him, tribals would have suffered an even worse fate. His legacy may be contentious, but the ideas Elwin engaged in are relevant even today. Elwin contributed to one of the fundamental ideals of modern India, that is, the development of Indian nationhood. His studies of the tribal population of India are available in literary forms and accessible to non-anthropological readers. This has led to an impact on the enlightened minds of the dominant social groups. They were convinced about the essential oneness of all people of India despite their diversity in all aspects and social life. He applied liberal and imaginative approach to tribal development. This enabled the Government of India to formulate tribal policies which combined the best of idealism and realism in the contemporary socio-cultural life of India. This has helped to bring about a synthesis of the traditional and the modern elements of India's life and thought in the new Indian nation. Let's summarize. Verrier Elwin was an anthropologist and was often called J.G. Fraser of Indian anthropology. Elwin was involved in national movement, so at this period in his initial days, he had no working idea for the tribes. He was just interested in being part of the national struggle and was influenced by Gandhi. In his writings, Elwin took care to stress that he was not against assimilating tribals into the mainstream. He only wanted such assimilation to occur at a pace and on terms that suited the tribals. Elwin influenced Nehru's policies for Indian tribes. Elwin's critics say he was an anti-modern romantic whose influence on tribal policy further marginalized the tribals. I hope you now know a little more about Verrier Elwin. Thank you for watching the presentation. Do like, subscribe, share and leave your comments about this presentation or any other topics you would like to learn more about.